Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and as I was having my morning coffee, I was scrolling on Reddit, particularly subreddit drama, as one does, and I stumbled upon something that I thought was actually really relevant to the AuthorTube booktube community. Specifically focusing on the intersection of author pen names, pseudonyms, and identity. How we present ourselves and our stories and how those are interconnected, or to some readers, to some people not connected at all. So I want to discuss the story of Carmen Mola, who presented themselves as a Spanish female crime writer. They wrote pretty gritty, pretty graphic, violent thriller novels. They in particular had one series that sold really, really well. I think it was a 3-book series. Quoting CNN's article about this, Mola's novels usually revolve around the character of Detective Elena Blanco, described by publisher Penguin Random House as a peculiar and lonely woman and a lover of grappa, karaoke, collector's cars, and sex, and SUVs. Carmen Mola was always upfront and honest about writing under a pseudonym in order to maintain anonymity, but they did have pictures on their website and talked about being a mother to 3, working at a university as a professor, and in part, this sort of persona of Carmen Mola really helped aid the marketing of these kind of gruesome thrillers, this juxtaposition in a lot of people's minds of this mother, university writer, teacher by day sort of thing, and graphic violent writer at night, right? In a twist, however, when Carmen Mola goes up to accept this award that she has won, it turns out that Carmen Mola is not a woman and is in fact 3 men working together to write under this pen name. So that is the story, right? And now I want to talk about the reaction to some of that, but also I'm a writer who uses pen names, and I want to talk about kind of how that intersects with identity and these stories that I'm writing. And just in general, we're going back to kind of this writer responsibility thing, but what is the responsibility of the writer when assuming a pen name? A bunch of people upon this reveal took to Twitter to be like, it's kind of shitty, right? Not that 3 men might write under a woman's pen name, but that they'd created an entire persona. It wasn't just the pen name, it was this entire life and the constant lying to journalists and presenting the writer as a character themselves. Bonus points for the audacity of not revealing any of this, going to pick up the €1 million cash prize in front of the Spanish king and upon then revealing that they are in fact 3 men. There's been a lot of talk recently about separating the art from the artist. And some people are better at doing that than others. Some people don't want to know anything about the artist, they just want to take in the work. Some people can take in the work, know about the artist, think they're shitty, and still consume the thing because they like the thing, right? And some people can't do that at all. So depending on where you fall on this spectrum might indicate how you feel about this whole story, right? I think because a marketing tool that they used, this supposed juxtaposition between the author as a person, or so the assumed person, and the stories they were writing, because that was a focal point, I think it is super relevant to the conversation. I think you can't separate that from potentially the popularity of this author or the series. So let's backtrack a little bit, kind of put that to the side, kind of keep it in our cap. As we just discussed generally, I'm a writer who uses multiple pen names. Now, all of the pen names that I currently use are female sounding, though that's potentially debatable depending on your culture and whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with women taking on traditionally masculine pen names and vice versa. Depending on the genre that you write, men will sell better in romance if they take a woman's pen name. Women tend to sell better in fantasy and sci-fi occasionally if they take on, you know, their initials instead of their potentially very feminine sounding name. There's a lot of wrong with that, but but I don't fault the author, okay? I want to hold on to that and also tell you about someone that I used to know. Someone that I used to know. Anyways, they took on a pen name that was sort of a spin on their actual real name, but was using Japanese words, and they wrote fiction predominantly set in Japan. Now, they had a podcast where they talked about this very openly, that they themselves were not Japanese, and also the name that they'd chosen to be their pen name wasn't an actual name in Japan. It was kind of a mashup of some words. So anyways, it's interesting, but worth noting that people who are not Japanese might not have recognized this as not a name. So she had someone who was writing into her, basically kind of calling her out for using a name from an ethnicity and a background that was not her own. And the other person that I used to know said that they didn't have a problem with it, that they disagreed with the person writing into them because they never presented themselves as that in any of their author bio or information. So it's kind of like an opposite case of what these men did. But either way, readers might have assumed that the author had an identity that was not actually their identity, based either on publicity and marketing or just the name on the book. So this leads us back into separating the art from the artist. If you're able to separate those and it doesn't matter to you at all, and in fact you never care about who the artist is, then again, this might not be a problem to you. But I do think it is worth discussing why it's a problem to some people. And why, for instance, I wouldn't build a whole other character of a writer that doesn't share an identity that is the same to mine. First off, most of the reason that people use a pseudonym or a pen name is to remain anonymous. And oftentimes, though not always, they usually don't have a picture associated with them. If they do have a picture, it's either their same photo, just with a different name. It might be an illustration instead. Their background is usually their own background if they decide to put one at all. For instance, I talked about how Kate Kavanaugh is not my real name. Kate is my real middle name. Kavanaugh's not my real last name. This is my real face talking about my real opinions. And same for my romance pen name, right? Now, I also think it's worth lumping in this hashtag own voices discussion that's been going on, because some readers do care about the identity of the authors that they're reading. There are writers that I've stopped reading because I don't agree with them, and it's a point of, you know, pretty serious contention for me that I cannot go on reading their books having known what I know now. Reading helps us become more empathetic, and reading from writers that aren't like us only helps us to become more empathetic, which is a wonderful thing. Whether that is an issue book, or it's a romance, or it's a sci-fi, or it's whatever else, right? And seeing the push on BookTube to read more widely has also been a wonderful thing. But if those people are seeking out a thriller writer that's also a woman who's presented herself as a woman to everyone, and the marketing behind the book and the series as a whole is about this woman who writes these thriller novels, you feel a little duped or a little lied to in part. But also there was criticism at the time of these guys, of this author's novels, for being too graphic and too violent, particularly around abuse of women, which is a like men writing women thing that happens sometimes, and often a criticism of, you know, fantasy written by men, or it has been in the past. I think we're kind of evolving past that, or not utilizing it as the only growth of a character. But anyways, I'd not read any of Carmen's novels, so I'm trying to think how I would feel if an author that was marketed to me as having a particular identity turned out not to have that identity, or was three men in a trench coat sitting on top of each other or whatever, right? Like, when I personally think about it on the sort of ickiness scale, I think it's kind of gross to take someone else's marginalization and use it as a ploy. Whether that's someone's gender, sexual orientation, race, whatever else. Presenting yourself as a writer who has this or does this and then using that as a marketing tool is just kind of gross to me. Now, I don't know enough about the Spanish publishing industry, but there are certainly genres where the bulk of the writers are women. I gave the example of men using women's pen names in order to do better in romance. And in that case, the ickiness factor sort of goes down for me, but that's, you know, it's kind of a broad conversation. Choosing a pen name can be a deeply personal choice to begin with. You know, maybe you want to see your name that you've always had on the cover of your books, and that's a wonderful thing. Maybe you're like me and just want to get your books out there, and you want to write a bunch of different genres, and you want to have different pen names for each of them. You want to kind of have your personal life and your writing life separate. And that's valid too. I have questions about what you'll think. Please do comment down below. Let me know what you think about the story. Let me know if you've heard about this story before. Let me know if you've read anything by Carmen, or by the three men who are Carmen. Let me know where you think the sort of line might be drawn, either for you, what you'd personally do, or what you think is right in choosing a pen name that's from a background or potentially represents something that you're not. But that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to hear what you think, and I will see you all very soon with a new video. Bye. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. I think unlike a lot of the... Oh, where am I going with this? I don't know.